It's very important to focus on gender when looking at issues of climate finance, because we have established by all of the data that women are impacted, and they are disproportionately impacted by many of the climate change phenomena, and that they're 50% of the population. So first they should have decision making. So it's a rights issue. It's also an issue of effectiveness and sustainability, that if we really need to address the climate, we need to bring women in, and women in the developing countries are in agricultural sector, they're in fishery, they're the ones that are having to deal with the reality of what it means to deal with the aftermath of hurricanes, droughts, and flood, and so forth. We need to restructure the economies, all the economies, both the most developed and developing countries, if we are going to be able to address and solve the climate dilemma, as well as to meet the commitment that we are trying to keep the temperature from going above 1.5, I would say, though that's aspirational in some quarters, but 2 at the minimum, at a maximum anyway. So so it's important then to recognize that in restructuring there will be dislocations. I think we need to make very proactive attention to ensuring, one, in the case of renewable energies, that women will not automatically be part of that value chain unless there are specific programs made to incentivize them, to train them, to help them to master some of the new skills and techniques, right? We know already that there are some women who are being very successful with mini grids and small solar projects, right? But if we don't want women to stay in that in the way that they are in the old economy, in the micro enterprise, we want them to be able to have business that should scale up. That means that we need to figure out different ways to cluster, different ways to integrate them more credibly into the global value chains of renewable energy. And another dimension is in terms of forests, which is a big part of mitigation, because we're counting on the forests to be sinks for absorbing the greenhouse gas. So we need to be very careful when we are sequestering land for either biofuels or for reserving lands for not being deforested. We don't want to deforest, but we also need to recognize that women do medicines. They get medicine from the forest. They use the forest for various lifestyle and life generating, so we need to make sure that those are protected. And what we are pushing in many cases in terms of climate finance for adaptation is insurance. Now, if you're a micro enterprise, it's very hard for you to come up with premiums for insurance. And so the whole issue of, is that an appropriate thing for a micro enterprise, or should government create a pot of money or a pool of money that can help those kinds of micro enterprise who are dependent on energy sector or other kinds of sectors in the economy that will be negatively affected by transitions in a new economy. So I think we need to focus attention to that, and that's probably why the Green Climate Fund has now set aside a $200 million pilot for MSMEs, recognizing that they require special attention. They're not going to show up like a big company to the Green Climate Fund. They need their capacity built, they need to be prepared, readiness, they need to be made ready to access that fund, and there's a whole process of making them ready